Shadows on Fifth Avenue Act 3. The courtroom was alive with a tense energy that hummed beneath the polished wood panels and fluorescent lights. Journalists huddled near the back, cameras ready, while the jury filed in slowly, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and cautious attentiveness. Daniel Reeves sat beside Ethan Vickers, leaning back with his usual casual confidence, a small smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Across the aisle, the prosecutor arranged her notes with military precision, her sharp eyes flicking to Daniel like a hawk sizing up prey. The judge entered and everyone rose out of protocol. The gavel struck. People vs. Ethan Vickers, Case 342-178. Let us proceed. The bailiff handed over the file, and the courtroom settled into the disciplined rhythm of the law. The prosecutor rose first, pacing deliberately before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case is straightforward. On the morning of December 10th, Mr. Vickers was found near the scene of a brutal attack. The victim, Mr. Jonathan Keene, was struck with a heavy object, resulting in fatal head trauma. Mr. Vickers' proximity to the scene, combined with eyewitness testimony and evidence found on the ground, places him in direct connection with this crime. She called the first witness, Officer Rebecca Lynn. She took the stand, sworn in under oath, and provided a meticulous account of what she observed at the scene. The victim was slumped over the passenger seat. There was a footprint in the fresh cement nearby. The suspect, later identified as Mr. Vickers, was located nearby a short time after the 911 call. He appeared nervous and evasive when approached by police. Daniel raised an eyebrow, tilting his head slightly. Officer Lynn, he began, his voice smooth, tinged with southern charm, you stated that Mr. Vickers appeared nervous. Correct. Yes, he did, Lynn replied. And nervousness, would you agree, is a natural reaction for someone unexpectedly confronted by police? Yes, but it can also indicate guilt, she hedged. Daniel leaned back, spreading his arms with mock exasperation. The subtle art of assumption. So, officer, would you say that every nervous person is guilty of a crime? The courtroom chuckled quietly, the prosecutor's jaw tightened. Daniel's humor never failed to ruffle feathers, yet always disarmed tension just enough. Next, the prosecutor introduced the gold-plated pocket watch found at the scene. The coroner, Dr. Angela Marks, was called. The watch contained partial fingerprints, some of which could not be immediately identified. The time of death is estimated around 7:15 a.m. The injury is consistent with a heavy, blunt object. There were no defensive wounds, suggesting the victim was taken completely off guard. Daniel scribbled notes but did not speak, letting the prosecutor press the narrative. Spencer leaned forward, eyes scanning the courtroom quietly, taking note of each detail, each expression, each subtle inconsistency. The next witness was a cab driver. The prosecutor asked, do you recall seeing anyone running from the area of Fifth Avenue on the morning of December 10th? Yes, the driver replied. A young man, dark jacket, running fast. Couldn't see his face. Daniel immediately raised an objection. Your Honor, this witness cannot definitively identify my client as the person he saw. It's purely speculative. The judge nodded. Sustained. The jury will disregard any implied identification beyond the witness' direct observation. The prosecutor smiled thinly but pressed on. She called a forensics analyst to the stand, a woman in her 30s who laid out the details of the fingerprints and chemical analysis. The partial prints on the watch are inconclusive at this time. However, a footprint found near the cement shows where patterns consistent with men's size 12, possibly military-style boots. Further analysis is pending. Daniel exchanged a glance with Spencer, who merely nodded. That glimmer of hope, buried in ambiguity, was exactly what they needed. The prosecutor shifted her approach, turning to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the circumstances are damning. Mr. Vickers was at the scene, appeared nervous, and cannot provide an alibi verified by independent evidence. We ask you to consider these facts carefully. Justice for Mr. Keene demands accountability. Daniel, when it was his turn to cross-examine, approached with his characteristic swagger, voice low and controlled. Officer Lynn, earlier you mentioned nervousness. You agreed that it is not exclusive to guilt. Correct. Yes, she admitted. And you cannot testify that my client committed this crime solely because he appeared nervous? That is correct, she said, frowning slightly. Daniel let the moment linger, allowing the jury to see his point. Thank you, officer. No further questions. The prosecutor called a neighbor who claimed to have heard a scream. The witness described a fleeting shadow, someone moving quickly down the street. Daniel leaned forward, smiling softly. Ma'am, you only saw a shadow, yes? Yes, she said. And you can't identify my client in that shadow? No. And the scream, you didn't see who caused it? No. Thank you. Daniel returned to his seat, a small smirk tugging at his lips. The jury was absorbing every nuance. Subtle doubt was beginning to weave its way into their thoughts. The prosecutor's final witness for the day was the coroner again, who confirmed the blunt force trauma. Daniel nodded thoughtfully but did not immediately speak. Spencer whispered in his ear, "No defensive wounds, no eyewitness placing him at the moment. The kid's alive in this fight." The courtroom broke for lunch. Daniel leaned back, turning to Ethan. "Kid, here's the thing. They painted a scary picture, but paint don't make a crime. Nervousness, shadows, footprints, we'll peel those apart one by one." Ethan exhaled, a mixture of relief and anxiety. I just want them to know the truth." Daniel's southern charm softened, a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "And that's exactly what we're gonna do. Ain't nothing more satisfying than proving the truth, and having a little fun along the way." As the afternoon session resumed, the prosecutor introduced additional circumstantial evidence. Partial fingerprints, security footage showing only vague shadows, and a neighbor's statement about a figure running. Daniel allowed it all to sit, unchallenged for now, letting the jury weigh the ambiguity themselves. Spencer took mental notes and cataloged every piece of evidence that could later be questioned. He noticed minor inconsistencies. The cab driver's account had a time discrepancy of several minutes, and the footprint suggested someone taller than Ethan with a heavier stride. The prosecutor concluded her case with a pointed statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all these pieces taken together create a clear picture of guilt. Mr. Vickers was present. He had motive, opportunity, and yet he claims innocence. Justice demands that we hold him accountable." Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching the jury carefully. He whispered to Spencer, "All right, partner. They think they've tied the kid up. But tomorrow we show them just how loose that rope really is." The gavel struck and the courtroom recessed for the day. Ethan felt a glimmer of hope for the first time, though anxiety still coiled in his stomach. Outside, the city carried on, indifferent, yet the stakes inside that courtroom had never been higher. Daniel and Spencer walked the hallways of justice, voices low. "Tomorrow," Daniel said, "we start turning their story into our story." Spencer's eyes narrowed. "And we'll make sure every shadow, every footprint, and every so-called fact falls exactly where it needs to. The truth is on our side." Outside, Manhattan streets glittered in the late afternoon sun, but inside, the quiet hum of tension promised that the real drama was only beginning.